The established mantra for the Moto G range is that it's an excellent bit of kit from a respectable manufacturer at a wallet-friendly price. This has been true for the last 2 years, but does it still stand up as the best budget phone when there's been an assault of cheaper Android devices hitting the market this year? Looks-wise, the new Moto G is very similar to the last second generation model. My partner even kept picking it up, mistaking it for hers. The biggest difference is in the back cover, which is now a textured or ribbed hard plastic. This adds significant grip, although it is a bit of a dirt trap. Motorola phones aren't for dimension and weight obsessives. The tapered edges make them look thinner than they are, however there are a fair few thinner and lighter models available. This is a solid, bulky build which manages the Goldilocks just right effect, suitable for most hand sizes and weighty enough for those that like to feel their phone rather than worry it will float away. Would have been nice if Motorola allowed owners of the previous generation to carry on using the extra coloured shells that they've purchased, but unfortunately they haven't. The slight changes in the chassis mean there's a new range of these. Most manufacturers deliver new accessories for each generation though, so you can't really blame them, and these are fairly cheap when compared to others. Nothing about the Moto G's looks will offend anyone's tastes, unless you have very small hands. However, there's also nothing particularly striking. Many other manufacturers are making a play in this budget space, and some of them, such as Alcatel, have brought slick, lightweight designs with them. The 720 HD panel is still a passable resolution at this size, however it's understandable that in its third year some will be disappointed that it's not higher. Budget devices are about compromise though, and this is probably still the best option. Keeping the screen size large and accessible with a comfortable resolution saves money. A full HD panel would also drain the battery faster. Brightness is very good, and so is readability in a number of light sources, including direct sunlight. Motorola have also included the hardened Gorilla Glass 3 covering. One thing that did strike me almost immediately was that the screen felt a lot slicker and more responsive than the second gen. My touch felt almost closer to the LCD panel below, perhaps indicating a slimmer construction. This may also have been due to a factory-applied coating on the glass that wears off over time, but either way, simply touching it was a pleasant experience. It would be harsh to really knock the Moto G for not having a 1080 panel, seeing as this is still marketed as a budget phone. If Motorola make a 4th generation next year though, it will probably be expected with the price drops in technology. Overall, this has decent colour quality whilst being bright and responsive. Motorola really needed to improve cameras on all their phones this year. The last few Gs have all been a bit lacking, not just in raw resolution but also in a fairly lacklustre application. Unfortunately, the results are still a bit of a mixed bag. The jump to 13 megapixels can provide more detailed images, although the app itself still lags behind the competition. For some people, the camera can make or break a phone. It's an integral experience for many users who want lots of features and top results in a variety of lighting conditions. There are also, though, plenty of us that don't really mind it so much. As long as it can take a decent snap or two when we need it, that's all that really matters. The Moto G3 still falls into the latter of these camps. Improving the camera must have been on the agenda for the team behind this phone. There's a larger sensor and a dual LED flash, and there have been some additions to the software. Overall though, the app interface is very basic, and whilst there are new options to change light balance, a low light mode and manual focusing, everything still seems to feel like a bit of a work in progress with some subpar image processing. Good light and a steady hand can provide some lovely shots, as you'd hope. There are, however, often times when colours can feel muted, or dusky natural light or flares can really mess with the processing, casting a murky haze or spikes of unnatural colour. It's not a deal breaker by any means. Most of the time this is a decent shooter that will serve most of us just fine. It is though a stark reminder of the price, and something to bear in mind if you're a big camera user with high expectations. In terms of audio, the last G was loud, and this one matches up. I've usually got my phones turned up to max volume because I'm a nightmare for missing calls, yet for once there's no need here. Even the earpiece for calls can have people on the other side of the room listening in. At first glance you might think this is because of dual speakers adorning the front. However, the top bar on the fascia is in fact a pretender. This hides the earpiece, but there's no main speaker up here, making the volume and call clarity of the G sound even more impressive, as it all comes from a single mono speaker on the base. Call quality has always been excellent, little to no notable distortion on a number of calls, ranging from standard voice-only signal to high-speed 4G networks. If there's only one downside to excellent audio, it's that it's actually quite hard to make the G quiet. Android 5's split audio controls can put notifications down to a sensible level, however just one notch up on the slider for main media and it can still fill a quiet room. That said, I should probably stop watching videos in bed when everyone else is asleep. Performance-wise, the 3rd gen Moto G comes in 2 versions. There's a normal 8 or 16GB storage split, each of which gets about 3.5GB eaten up by Android 5. Motorola have made the odd decision though of giving the bigger phone more RAM, 2GB instead of 1. This has the frustrating result of the new Moto G actually being 2 different phones. A difference of 1GB might seem small on a spec sheet, however, with Android 5 running the show, we end up with a very notable difference in performance. If you open up a lot of tabs and regularly jump between open apps, you'll encounter noticeable slowdown on the 1GB version. With 2, it suddenly all goes away. It's no surprise that major review websites received a 2GB version from Motorola. Now that's not to say the 1GB version is a slow hog by any means. The experience is on a par with plenty of other phones in this price bracket. That's not what the Moto G should be though. A phone that used to be the best at this price is now on a par with several other brands, unless you pay a significant premium to Motorola directly for the 2GB version. Note that this is not currently for sale from any retailers. With extra software features, the G range has always been light on customization. There's a little bit more in terms of features this year though. Running as standard, you'll find a few gesture-based controls included, plus some wizardry going on with the screen and notifications. The first of the gestures is a double karate chop motion to launch the torch, useful if you remember you've got it. The second gesture is a quick launch for the camera, activated by a flick of the wrist. Some reviewers love this, but I found it to be incredibly sensitive, launching the camera application almost every time I put the phone down or picked it up swiftly, resulting in several seconds for me to wait for the app to load before I could jump out of it. Perhaps my G sensor was a little bit sensitive, or I'm rougher or more animated in my use than I realised. Whatever the reason, this got a little bit annoying quickly and I turned the feature off. That's something to bear in mind if you think you have a fault, because the camera keeps booting up when you don't expect it. The screen features, dubbed Moto Display, are similarly chalk and cheese. By default, the Moto G will light up at minimum brightness and show an interactive icon for a few seconds when you get a notification, such as a missed call, text message, email, or push notifications from apps. These interactive icons can take you directly to the associated app after inputting any PIN or pattern from the lock screen. That can be a time saver. The downside I found to this was that if you have a decent number of notifications coming in, the whole screen regularly lighting up is a lot more distracting than, say, a pulse LED. Also, after the screen goes dark for a few seconds, the Moto G will light up again every time it senses movement, presumably to alert you to notifications you may have missed. Similar to the camera launching gesture, I found my G screen lighting up at the slightest movement or bump. Sometimes it just seemed to light up of its own accord. This also got a little bit frustrating, and after a few days I disabled the Moto Display features. As an aside, I'm also convinced I've seen a noticeable increase in battery life since disabling a few of these features. Conclusion: nothing falls below average with the Moto G, indeed a few things are markedly above average. What is average though, especially when considering price, and the idea that the Moto G has been the undisputed king of budget phones for 2 years? Officially, the RRP for the 8GB and 1GB RAM configuration is £179 from Motorola. I'd say in this market that touches the upper limits of what you can consider a budget phone. Clove and most other retailers though sell around the £150 mark, which is a lot more appealing. The 16GB and 2GB RAM model is a bit of an annoyance. Currently you can only get hold of one for £209 from Motorola directly. The logic is that it's worth the £30 upgrade, which would be true if the actual market price of the base model didn't make this closer to a £60 upgrade. Also, once you've broken the £200 barrier, can you really define a phone as budget? With the brilliant Moto X Play available at just £270, the more expensive version of the G sits at an uncomfortable price point. Looking around at well-received new brands such as Alcatel One Touch, Honor, and even some of Samsung's new J range, the G has a lot more competition than it's faced in the past. Motorola are likely to continue receiving very good reviews, and they'll sell a lot of Moto G units, especially when this phone is visible on the high street and widely available. However, if you scratch the surface of the SIM-free market and take a walk around, you'll find the Moto G is no longer the unassailable king of budget that it once was. Still a very good smartphone, and a worthy choice though. It almost sounds incredulous considering the prices of phones just a few months ago, but look around and you might find better value for money.